Hi folks, it's been a few weeks since I've posted anything to the cycling blog. I've been very busy and I have gotten a lot of riding in, and it's been a fair bit of commuting, and I've managed to get 4 rides on the titanium bike in, and I've realized a couple of things, made a few minor adjustments which ended up having major implications, and they've all worked out for the better. As I said, I've been very busy, and one of the reasons I've been very busy is because this arrived. I've been waiting for that. It's kind of nice because I no longer am taking my MacBook Pro on the train. I have a MacBook Pro that I use at the Justice Department every day, but I was taking my personal MacBook Pro down each day to work just to amuse myself on the train, and I'm not doing that any longer because I am now taking the iPad, and the iPad weighs a heck of a lot less than the MacBook Pro, and it's very nice for my amusement. One of the programs that I've loaded onto it is a program called Ascent Mobile, and there's a piece of Macintosh software called Ascent, which stores all of my cycling telemetry data, and I've got many years worth of data in it, and it's very nice to be able to go back and you can really measure your progress, and the the numbers don't lie. You can snow yourself and think you're doing a really good job, but the numbers will tell the truth in the end. So there's no way to get around the numbers. But the good thing is the iPad has, or as I said, there's an iPhone version of the Ascent application, and it enables me to sync all my data over from my computer. And there isn't an iPad version of it yet, but the iPhone version runs on the iPad. So it's very nice. I was sitting there today on the train and I was going through all my data, and the screen is so much bigger. Even though the resolution is the same, you can really take a look at some of these climbs and everything else, and it's a very nice way of just kicking back and analyzing your cycling data. So I've been enjoying that immensely. I hope they come out with an iPad version. The body is really, really kicking up nicely now. I'm somewhat surprised at how well my body seems to be coming around this year. The heart rate data is really trending downward quickly. And that's good because I really want to stay in an aerobic zone, not an anaerobic zone at this point, because I've got a fair bit of fat to get rid of. I have quite a bit of fat to get rid of this year, more than last year's. Well, actually, about the same amount as last year. But I don't want to go anaerobic. I want to stay as aerobic as possible when I'm riding. And the heart is complying very nicely, but it's almost complying too well. I did a 48-kilometer ride in Pennsylvania over the weekend, and my heart rate data was starting to trend down substantially. Now, I was still in the aerobic zone, but it was kind of surprising how far it was trending down. My heart rate tends to burn pretty hot. I've always had a relatively high resting heart rate to begin with. Even when I'm in exceptional shape, my resting heart rate really gets down to about 70. And it's currently, my resting heart rate is sitting at about 75. So my engine tends to run hot, and my heart rate data, my cycling heart rate data is really kicking down quickly. So I'm going to have to find ways to challenge myself. I think I'm going to start to do the dreaded intervals, which are fantastic for building strength and building endurance, but God, they're painful. If you don't know what an interval is, effectively what you do is you ride as hard as you can and you go anaerobic for about a minute. Then you rest for a minute, maybe two, and then you do it all over again. And you do these in cycles of 5, sometimes 10, and it's really exhausting and really murderously painful, but it does a world of good. It really enables you to break through plateaus, which happen pretty quickly in cycling. It's amazing to me how quickly I will plateau. It will only take a couple of months, and if I don't do something, I'm done. I can ride. I'm not really going to get any better unless I really push myself. Nonetheless, I mentioned earlier that I made some adjustments to my bike, and one of the realities of this new frame is, I've spoken before, there's two things that I've mentioned before. Number one, that it's a compact frame versus a traditional geometry frame. And number two, the bike has appeared to me to be stiffer than I thought it was going to be. And as I was contemplating this, I was actually almost getting a little worried a couple of weeks back because it seemed so stiff, it might have been too stiff for me. And when a bike is too stiff, it can definitely wear a cyclist out. And after pondering this a bit more, something dawned on me. I was measured a couple of years ago. I had a ProFit done, which is kind of an interesting process where they hook you up to a stationary bike frame that is totally adjustable, and they hook you up to a bank of computers and they measure your output wattage. And effectively what is done is they figure out what position a rider needs to be in to produce the maximum amount of wattage. And my numbers are very set, and my bike has been set up as best it can be to those numbers for several years now. And one of the most important numbers is the length of the top tube of the bicycle. That's the part where you step over it. It's the top tube that extends from the seat post up to the front where the handlebars are. And that is needed to be 550 millimeters, including the stem. That length needs to be 550 millimeters. Well, this new bike has got a effective top tube which is exactly 1 centimeter shorter than my previous bike was. And it dawned on me that I had not replaced my stem. And my previous stem was 100 millimeters or 10 centimeters. And if I really wanted to comply with my ideal setup, I needed to have a 110 millimeter stem or an 11 centimeter stem. And I hadn't done anything about that yet. Well, as I was contemplating the fact that this bike seemed surprisingly stiff to me, it dawned on me that if I changed the length of the stem, I might find the bike is a bit more compliant. It's much in the same way that a torque wrench, or if you're trying to turn a nut, if you try and turn it from, say, 5 inches out or 8 inches out, you can get a lot more leverage from 8 inches out. Now, that's just an example. In this case, we're really just talking about an additional centimeter. So I didn't know how much change it would make, though as soon as I put it on the bike and as soon as I rode out, it was blatantly obvious that the bike felt much more compliant. And it really shocked me how much more compliant it felt. I've mentioned this before, I mentioned it last year. It's surprising to me how much tiny changes in one setup position can have monumental effect in one's ability to, or one's athletic output. And one of the best ways to describe this is, one of the best examples I can give to you is your muscle memory gets set by repetition. And if I go out and ride at my standard cadence, which is anywhere between 92, 95, and I ride for 3 hours, I'm going to turn that crank over 16,500 plus times on a 3-hour ride. Well, anything you do with that kind of regularity, anything you do with that kind of frequency, you're going to build a very keen sense of muscle memory and what position you wish to be on your bicycle. So if anything changes, I've mentioned before that if my fore and aft position is off by even a couple of millimeters, I'll notice it, and I'll notice it damn quickly. And that's why, because once again, anything that you do with that kind of frequency, your body's going to tune up to it very quickly. And you consider how many times that I'd ride during the year, my body tunes up to it extremely quickly. And as soon as I put this new stem on the bike felt absolutely different. It felt much more compliant. I was able to get out of the saddle and climb, and the bike moved with me just enough to the point where I was able to really find the rhythm on my climbs.